det største skulle have været?
Der er 6 til 18.
6 til 18. Så jeg tror, jeg tager det vers, fordi så vil jeg lægge noget til. Så jeg tager bare 6 til 18. Så det er lidt mange vers, 6 til 18, det er voldsomt mange vers. Så jeg tror ikke, vi tager så mange vers.
Kan vi bare læse oversættelserne noget af?
Det kunne man måske også gøre. Han har lige set, hvordan det er den lyder. Om det er det tror jeg er en god idé. Det tror jeg nok, vi kan overskue. Ja. Prøver vi. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
So reading from Canto 6, Chapter 11, text 6 to 18. Chapter is entitled The Transcendental Qualities of Vritasura. Text 6. Sukadeva Goswami said, Vritasura, the angry and most powerful hero, terrified the demigods with his stout and strongly built body. When he roared with a resounding voice, nearly all living entities fainted. When all the demigods heard Vritasura's tumultuous roar, which resembled that of a lion, they fainted and fell to the ground as if struck by thunderbolts. As the demigods closed their eyes in fear, Vritasura, taking up his trident and making the earth tremble with his great strength, trampled the demigods beneath his feet on the battlefield, the way a mad elephant tramples hollow bamboos in the forest. Seeing Vritasura's disposition, Indra, the king of heaven, became intolerant and threw at him one of his great clubs, which are extremely difficult to counteract. However, as the club flew toward him, Vritasura easily caught it with his left hand. Vi har ikke haft det her, det lyder meget kendt.
Nå, vi har snakket om det i forbindelse med indledningen, eller den indledning, der altså, der er lidt sådan, at komme og snakke om det her.
Okay, så det er der, det kom fra. Ja. O King Parikshit, the powerful Vritasura, the enemy of King Indra, angrily struck the head of Indra's elephant with that club, making a tumultuous sound on the battlefield. For this heroic deed, the soldiers on both sides glorified him. Struck with the club by Vritasura, like a mountain struck by a thunderbolt, the elephant Airavata, feeling great pain and spitting blood from its broken mouth, was pushed back 14 yards. In great distress, the elephant fell, with Indra on its back. When he saw Indra's carrier elephant thus fatigued and injured, and when he saw Indra morose because his carrier had been harmed in that way, The great soul Vritasura, following religious principles, refrained from again striking Indra with the club. Taking this opportunity, Indra touched the elephant with his nectar-producing hand, thus relieving the animal's pain and curing its injuries. Then the elephant and Indra both stood silently. O king, when the great hero Vritasura saw Indra, his enemy, the killer of his brother, standing before him with a thunderbolt in his hand, desiring to fight, Vritasura remembered how Indra had cruelly killed his brother. Thinking of Indra's sinful activities, he became mad with lamentation and forgetfulness. Laughing sarcastically, he spoke as follows. Sri Vritasura said, "He who has killed a Brahmana, he who has killed his spiritual master, indeed, he who has killed my brother, is now by good fortune standing before me, face to face as my enemy, O most abominable one. When I pierce your stone-like heart with my trident, I shall be freed from my debt to my brother. Only for the sake of living in the heavenly planets, you killed my elder brother, a self-realized, sinless, qualified Brahmana who had been appointed your chief priest. He was your spiritual master, but although you entrusted him with the performance of your sacrifice, you later mercilessly severed his heads from his body, the way one butchers an animal. Indra, you are bereft of all shame, mercy, glory, and good fortune, derived of these good qualities by the reactions of your fruitive activities. You are to be condemned even by man-eaters, Rakshasas. Now I shall pierce your body with my trident, and after you die with great pain, even fire will not touch you, only the vultures will eat your body. You are naturally cruel if the other demigods, unaware of my prowess, follow you by attacking me with raised weapons. I shall sever their heads with this sharp trident. With those heads I shall perform a sacrifice to Bhairava and the other leaders of the ghosts, along with their hordes. So now we'll get to text 80. So here I read the Sanskrit. Ato harene kulishena vira. So Ato harene kulishena vira Harta pamache vashiro yadiha Tatra ninabuta balim vidhaya Manasvinam bhadaraja prapatshe. And we can repeat word by word together here. Ato,
Ato,
otherwise, Hare,
Hare,
O King Indra,
O King Indra, me,
of me, Kulishena,
by
by your thunderbolt,
the thunderbolt,
Vira, O great hero, Harta, you cut off, Pramatya, destroying my army, Eva, certainly, Shira, head, Yadi, if, Iha, in this battle, Tatra, in that case, Andrina, relieved of all debts in this material world, Bhuta Balim, a presentation for all living entities, Vidhaya, arranging, Manasvina, all great sages like Narada Muni, Padarajaham,
Padarajaham,
the dust of the lotus feet.
dust of the lotus feet.
Prapatsye,
Prabhate,
I shall achieve.
I shall achieve.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. But if in this battle you cut off my head with your thunderbolt and kill my soldiers, O Indra, O great hero, I shall take great pleasure in offering my body to other living entities, such as jackals and vultures. I shall thus be relieved of my obligations to the reactions of my karma, and my fortune will be to receive the dust from the lotus feet of great devotees like Narada Muni. Purport. Sri Narottam Das Thakur sings, Chaya Gosani Yare Mui Taradasa Tan Shabara Padarenu Mora Panchagrasa. I am the servant of the 6 Goswamis, and the dust of their lotus feet provides by 5 kinds of food. A Vaishnava always desires the dust of the lotus feet of previous acharyas and Vaishnavas. Vritasura was certain that he would be killed in the battle with Indra, because this was the desire of Lord Vishnu. He was prepared for death because he knew that after his death he was destined to return home back to Godhead. This is a great destination, and it is achieved by the grace of a Vaishnava. Chadiya Vaishnava Seva Nistara Payeche Keva. No one has ever gone back to Godhead without being favored by a Vaishnava. In this verse, therefore, we find the words Manasvinam Padaraja Prapatsye. I shall receive the dust of the lotus feet of great devotees. The word Manasvinam refers to great devotees who always think of Krishna. They are always peaceful, thinking of Krishna, and therefore they are called Dhira. The best example of such a devotee is Narada Muni. If one receives the dust of the lotus feet of a Manasvi, a great devotee, he certainly returns home, back to Godhead. So in this particular verse, the name of Narada Muni is mentioned. So, in this connection, I would like to take an opportunity to speak something about Narada Muni. And there is a particular verse in the first canto, as in the 5th chapter, which explains very nicely of how Narada Muni, he's an acharya, of how he's teaching the principles of Bhakti Yoga by personal experience. So I thought we could look into that just today.
Hvorfor er det på engelsk?
Komagora prefers English. We can also take Danish, as you prefer. I'm at your service.
Whatever you like.
Maybe because we read a little bit more here, maybe it's good. I'm not so good at directly translating to Danish. It would be a bit strange. So, this particular chapter, the 5th chapter of the first canto, it's entitled Conversation between Narada and Vyasadeva. And as we know, when Vyasadeva, he had compiled the Puranas, he had compiled all the Vedic literature, which encompasses the Puranas and Upanishads and even the Mahabharata, we hear that he was not satisfied. He was not fulfilled. So in that condition of feeling dejected, his spiritual master, who is Narada Muni, he came in from outer space. He didn't even come in with SAS. He came from outer space with his Veena, and he appeared on that spot, and he began to speak to Vyasadeva, and he spoke this verse: Bhavatanuditam prayam yasho bhagavato amalam yaneva shauna tushyeta manyeta darshanam kilam. And that means you have not actually broadcast the sublime and spotless glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Indeed, that philosophy which does not satisfy his transcendental senses is considered worthless. So he chastises Vyasadeva, and that says, you have not broadcast the sublime and spotless glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You have combined a lot of material, a lot of instructions on the Karma Kanda, even Jnana Kanda section, but it's not clear. Krishna has not been very clearly and properly glorified within these writings, this compilation. So, in this last verse of this chapter 1.5.40, then Narada Muni, he gives this instruction to Vyasadeva how he should come out of his dejection. What is the remedy? So in this particular verse he speaks, Tvamapyadabra sruta visrutam vigo samapyate yena vidam bubupsitam Prakaiduka muhuraditatmanam sanklesha nirvanam musanti nanyata. So Narada Muni, he instructs, please therefore describe the Almighty Lord's activities which you have learned by your vast knowledge of the Vedas, for that will satisfy the hankerings of great learned men, and at the same time mitigate the miseries of the masses of common people who are always suffering from material pangs. Indeed, there is no other way to get out of such miseries. And we will read just the first part of the purport, which Srila Prabhupada, he writes, Sri Narada Muni, from practical experience, definitely asserts that the prime solution of all problems of material work is to broadcast very widely the transcendental glories of the Supreme Lord. So this particular point I thought we'd speak about today, that Narada Muni from practical experience. So what does it mean? When Srila Prabhupada says Narada Muni's practical experience, how does this relate to what Narada Muni just spoke? That question, that I thought we could speak about. And if we later, or in the Bhagavatam, Narada Muni, he will explain, this will come in the next chapter, Narada Muni, he will explain his story, so to speak, to his disciple Vyasadeva. He will explain to his disciple his coming to the point where he is now, the point of becoming Narada Muni. How did Narada Muni get to that, his elevated position? And he will explain that in his previous birth, he took the birth of a son of a maidservant, which was a result of having committed an offense in the heavenly planets, where he was, as a Gandharva, he would sing inappropriately in glorification of the demigods in a yajna meant for glorifying Lord Vishnu. So he took, for that incident, he was cursed by the Prajapatis sages to take birth on earth as the son of a maidservant. And in that birth, which is a birth which is a covered, it's you see, he took the part of the common masses. A Shudra is basically considered part of the suffering common masses of people. So he took that particular birth. But in that birth, he had the opportunity to hear from great saintly persons who came to the house where his mother was serving. And by hearing from those great saintly persons, then Narada Muni explains to Vyasadeva, he became enlightened. He took the remnants of their prasadam and he heard from them glories of the Lord. And in that way, when his mother, she died from a snake bite. It's explained that she died from a snake bite, and he was left as an orphan. So then he decided to go to the forest and find out the Supreme Personality of Godhead by the instructions he had received from the saints and sages. So when he did that, at one point, the Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared before him, and he saw for a brief moment, he saw the Lord like that. But later on, as we know, that the Lord, he disappeared again just to increase his taste. The Lord informed him, in this life you will not be able to see me anymore, because those who are not completely free from all material taints, they can hardly see me. So Narada Muni, he becomes very much eager to get the Lord's darshan again. So when he engages himself in the chanting of the holy name, meditates on the Lord like that at the end of that life as a son of a maidservant, he becomes Narada Muni. So the practical experience that we were speaking about, Narada Muni in this verse, he says that Vyasadeva described the Almighty Lord's activities, which you have learned by your vast knowledge of the Vedas, for that will mitigate the miseries of the common masses of people who are always suffering from material pangs. So Narada Muni, he had that experience. He took as a birth, as a common masses of people, a birth in ignorance. But by hearing the glories of the Lord, Narada Muni was lifted up from that ignorance. He was elevated. So that shows that Narada Muni's practical experience in that birth, that he was relieved from his material anxiety and material sufferings, simply by the process of hearing talks of the Lord, hearing subject matters glorifying the Supreme Lord. So that was practical experience. So that's why Narada Muni is Acharya, because he doesn't speak theoretically. What he speaks, he has realized. He knows it works. So that was Narada Muni's practical experience. So then the next part, which I thought was interesting, is that Narada Muni also speaks that talk of the glories of the Almighty Personality of Godhead, that will also satisfy the hankerings of great learned men. So what is Narada Muni's practical experience in that connection? Well, it's quite obvious, but as we know, Narada Muni, when he came to the position of Narada Muni, what is his business? What does he do? How does Narada Muni spend his time? He speaks constantly, Narayan. There's even a movie being made. When he comes, he's like, Narayan, Narayan, like that. And he simply speaks about the Lord. He enlightens. Right here, he's chastising Vyasadeva because you have not glorified the Lord properly. So he chastises his disciple, and when he gets up, he's always trying to preach about the Lord, trying to chant and hear about the Lord's glories. So there is a point where we are in the conditioned state of life, where we're covered by ignorance, we're covered by our material miseries, like that. And the remedy in that condition is to hear about the glories of the Lord. We have to hear as the verse here indicates, and as Narada Muni, the Acharya, he confirms here, that one needs to simply hear about the Lord to be lifted off from this condition of material ignorance and suffering. It's actually a crucial point. We can't miss it. We can't skip it and neglect it. That should be there, and we should take this as the remedy, as the medicine, in a regulated way. That medicine should be there in our life, so that we may be relieved from our material miseries. And then there's another point. When one has been relieved, as we say, one becomes a learned man, because there's a difference in the verse here. There's the common masses of people who are suffering from the pangs of material life, and there's the great learned man who has a hankering in their heart. So there's two different kind of categories mentioned in this verse. So when one is relieved, Narada Muni, he was relieved of his material miseries, and he became enlightened. So then another need arose, that some hankering was there. Some hankering was there in his heart. That desire for complete satisfaction was still there in his heart. So what was the remedy to satisfy that hankering for complete satisfaction within the core of his heart? What was the remedy? So Narada Muni speaks here to describe the Almighty Lord's activities that will satisfy the hankerings of great learned men. So that's the wonderful thing about the Lord's glories, chanting the holy name and chanting about the Lord. That is, it will relieve us from our material miseries. And when our material miseries are relieved, it has a further purpose, it has a further action, and that it will satisfy the desire within the core of our hearts. So, so that is Narada Muni a realization that right now Narada Muni, he's doing that to satisfy that hankering in his heart. He's chanting continually of the glories of the Lord. So that is why Narada Muni is glorified, because he gives the complete remedy by which we can elevate ourselves from our conditioned state of life to a position of complete satisfaction. And that's actually what we want. That's our goal. We want to somehow try to get that hankering in our heart satisfied, because otherwise it will torment us. If our heart is not, if we have not found the desire of desires, or the most prime concern, primal need of the soul, which is in the heart for complete satisfaction, then we'll still be feeling unsatisfied. So I thought this was very beautiful, how Narada Muni, he glorifies or emphasizes how important it is to glorify the Supreme Lord, what benefit you get from it. So I would like to connect it to what we're doing today, what we try to do today. Because in the Harinam Sankirtan, chanting the holy names of the Lord, there's a wonderful thing about that also. Because glorifying the Supreme Lord, that might need a little bit of knowledge. You might know some verses, as we know that the Lord is addressed as Uttama Shloka. He is glorified by selected verses in the Vedas. So you need to have some knowledge, basically, to glorify the Lord with the verses of the Vedas. So that's why Lord Chaitanya, he's actually made it so easy for us to be relieved from our material miseries, simply by chanting the holy names of the Lord. Because as we know, that within the holy name of the Lord, everything is included. Like all the name,